Thanks for listening and subscribing to the Clive Barker Podcast, episode 234, the only podcast dedicated to the imagination of Clive Barker. In this episode, Jose and I finish up our two-part series on Clive Barker's The Harrowers, this time going over issues 4 through 6. We do have some quick feedback from Cenobium's Ed Martinez, friend of the show. Good morning, Ryan. I just wanted to tell you how much I enjoyed the latest episode of the podcast. I've not really delved into the comics in a long time, at least 20 years since Nina and I collected the Hellraiser comics. And man, you guys really are informative and you gave us so much great detailed information. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it very, very much, and I think other people will also find it very interesting. All the best, Ed Martinez. So thanks a lot, Ed. We really appreciate that. And with that, we'll get right into the new episode.
Hey, hello and welcome to episode 234. So in this episode, we're discussing Clive Barker's The Harrowers, comic books number 4 through 6, which completes the run of the issues, which was just a 6-issue series. And this came out in 1994. And as usually, I'm Joe, and we got Ryan today.
Hey.
So yeah, we're going to be concluding this. This is a second parter for The Harrowers. And where we left off a few weeks ago was that the Harrowers rescued Cleopatra from hell, right? Where she was in there because one of her maids, when Rome was, about to come in and arrest her, just before she died, one of her servants gave her a lament configuration box, and she ended up solving it, and she never died. She did get taken to hell, and that's why she disappeared, and people said she had died. And before she did that, she was with Mark Anthony, and she decided to use her magic skills, because Cleopatra apparently has magic skills in this comic book, and she turned Mark Anthony into like a vapor and put him inside a little bottle where she would be able to keep him with her even if she got arrested. And anyway,
and she can't understand why he would not appreciate that.
Yeah. So when she got taken to hell, the little box with Mark Anthony got taken to hell with her. So he's been pretty much stuck in a bottle, and boy, is he angry.
Yeah. I have to kind of step outside of the story here and make a complaint, because it's it's the whole run of this series, but especially in these last 3 issues, almost all the problems that the Harrowers faced are caused by their own stupid choices. There's a big comedy of errors, and
yes.
I have a kind of to the point where I don't like these characters anymore, and I kind of wish that they would just die.
I understand. I mean, I think that the story goes everywhere, and it's crazy. It's a mess. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I remember reading these at the time, and I was like, oh yeah, cool. But a part of me was also like, I have no idea why they do the things that they do.
Yeah.
And sometimes I was like, well, this seems like a big waste of energy just to go through this adventure. Just didn't make a lot of sense to me. But
it reminds me a little bit of when we were covering Hyperkind.
Yeah.
And some of the writing for that, and the stupid things the characters did, and there was a lot of jumping in the air and screaming stuff and making dumb choices, but being really bold and confident about it.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into the way that the issue 4 opens, because so they want to find out where Mark Anthony's spirit is, and it actually flew inside a statue in Central Park, took over the statue, and it's now wreaking havoc, and the police are fighting it and shooting at it. So the Harrowers want to discover where that vapor has gone to, and they want to find a way to trap it back into a container or whatever, and just... Anyway, so the way that they find it, and this goes exactly towards what you were saying, is Ron Ringwood decides to blindfold himself, hop on a motorcycle,
yes,
and just go down a one-way street and see if he can find Mark Anthony's spirit that way. Because apparently Morte Mom said, what she said, that
What was it like?
Look to your inner self for guidance. And so, of
And that
course,
was
that
his
means
interpretation. It's like,
yeah,
damn
and of
it.
course that means he's going to blindfold himself, get on his bike, and just drive down a one-way street.
Through
The
heavy
stupid thing
heavy
is,
traffic. Yeah.
yeah, the stupid thing is it works, and yeah. So that's how our heroes start their journey in
Oh,
this comic book.
oh no.
And he's done it for 20 minutes, and he's
Yeah.
like 20 minutes now, and he'd hardly hit a thing, and then
Yeah.
he just runs over like someone and is like, yikes, sorry. And
Yeah, he
then
hits like a food cart or something, and this person goes flying, and
yeah, and then once he gets there, he discovers the cops shooting at the statue, and he's like, oh, okay, well, here we go, I guess I found him. And the statue kicks his bike and is like, oh, he clipped me and trashed my bike. Nobody does that to a harrower. And of course, weapons are meaningless to a statue because he's made out of metal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he gets smacked and he falls down like, 30, 50 yards away. Because Ron actually heals himself. He's like a Wolverine without the claws. So
and in the meantime, Cleopatra's trying to find him, and
yes.
so the twins are with Cleopatra, and they're at like, what is it, some kind of snooty like party or something, and she's like, oh no, he must be with one of these high society types of people, and they're like,
Yeah.
no, we know where he is, Cleopatra, just come with us. And she's like, I won't listen to servants.
Yes. So this takes place at the Metropolitan Museum, and it's 8 hours before Cleopatra gets transformed into someone else, because that's what happens when you get rescued from hell. You have like a day to make peace with being back in the world, and then you're going to reincarnate into a different person or animal or whatever. In this case, the rules are pretty unclear. It seems like you can also change into just an object, which is what's going to happen to Cleopatra. But yeah, so like you said, there's a Metropolitan Museum exhibit, and there's of course, there's an Egyptian side to the exhibit.
Yeah.
And Cleopatra is actually, finds that out and is like, oh, look at that. Hey, there's stuff I know. So she's going into, the museum. And in the meantime, Mark Anthony finds a theater, like a Broadway theater, that's playing something with like Cleopatra and Mark Anthony. Like maybe they're playing Shakespeare. And I don't know. And all of a sudden he breaks into a theater and he sees like two actors playing Cleopatra and Mark Anthony, and he's like, oh, you're betraying me with someone else. And it's like,
oh my god, I know. He's like, I'm gonna kill this imposter or whatever, and he lifts her up and like he's gonna rip her in half or something, and then it goes off panel and somebody says he hurt her.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what did he do exactly? That
And in the meantime, Cleopatra is like turning men into like bumbling idiots at the Metropolitan Museum because she's got magic powers. So she's trying to identify where Mark Anthony is. So she tells the people to reveal their true nature. So some men just start sucking on their toes and calling women mommy. And it's like, oh, can we go to the sandbox, mommy? And it's kind of a weird like thing that's going on here. And it's So anyway, in the meantime, they discover that did you see this part where there's a guy called Dublin? Of course, he's the guy who's trying to figure out a way to get. This is so convoluted. I mean, this is so convoluted. So what happens is the twins, like you said, that Cleopatra is not listening to the twins, and she's just at the Metropolitan Museum, and she's trying to find Mark Anthony in the middle of all the men there. And the twins are like, well, we got a plan. Let's find a way to get Mark Anthony's spirit to see where Cleopatra is, so he can finally come over here and they can both meet. But how they come up with this, it's really convoluted. They find a way to record Cleopatra at the party, and then they give a tape to Gage, the guy who changes places with the kitty cat Zinc. And then
so
he
then
changes.
they can play it on that the Times Square jumbotron, right?
Right, and so they get Dublin and Gage to go to to break into the office for Times Square advertising.
Did you get thrown like I did by their description of the process of putting the tape in the VCR? They're like, oh,
Yes.
and the computer turns the image from the tape into pixels.
Yes.
And then they had a little box off to the side that describes what pixels are. And
Yes.
then they're like, and then the pixels end up on the tape.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, this is needless, and it's not even really that accurate.
Yes, I mean this was 1994. I mean, when did the first iPhone come out? 2001?
2008, I think.
2008. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, anyway, so yeah, there's a little box here that says pixel dots that make up an image as on a TV screen, and it's like, okay, that probably wasn't necessary, but
Yeah.
So going back to the convoluted way is that they project the image of Cleopatra talking to summon Mark Anthony, like she's in the Metropolitan Museum saying, Mark Anthony, by the fivefold conquerors of Kuo and the power of the meld soul, I summon you. And then so the twins recorded her saying that, and then these guys go to the Times Square advertising and play it on the Jumbotron, which just happens to be right in front of the Mark Anthony statue. And he's like,
and then they made it seem like they needed to digitize it onto a computer, and then re-encode it back into like a VHS format so they could play it on the Jumbotron. It's like, no, that's not necessary. You just play the thing, and that's just like a monitor.
Right. So their ploy works, and Mark Anthony leaves the statue and immediately follows this vapor, flies into the Metropolitan Museum of Art, possesses one of the warrior armors, and he's still trying to kill Cleopatra. And anyway, so he's angry because she kept him as a hostage for so many thousands of years. And at one point here he says, I've been inside that bottle for 3,000 years. And I'm like, actually, didn't he die like in 30 BC? So that would be, 2,030 years, not 3,000 years. I think Malcolm Smith
rounding up.
Yeah, I think Malcolm Smith, who wrote this, should have gone to the encyclopedia for that one. But anyway, so yes, so now they're together at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and again, Mark Anthony doesn't have a head because he's just possessing a armor, and the helm fell off. And then, just so they can do this, he grabs a bust of himself, a marble bust of Mark Anthony, and sticks the head into the hole of the armor, and now he can speak. And now he can finally talk to Cleopatra, and she tells him, I just wanted to stay with you together, and I'm sorry, and now I'm going to reincarnate, and, I'm never going to know if you forgive me or not. And coincidence of coincidences, she's going to reincarnate into a freaking glass bottle. And right? I mean, how does this work though? I mean, I thought that they would reincarnate into a different person. I mean, I think at one point a person reincarnated into an animal in issues 2 or 3. But now
Cleopatra turned into a fly one time, right?
Yeah. And now Cleopatra turns into a box, a ancient earthen flask. And of course, Mark Anthony sees it and is like, all right, well, I guess since now I'm alone and I'm still a vapor, I'm just going to fly into like Cleopatra's, bottle and just we'll be together forever. And it's like, all right, fine. So why were you so angry about being in a bottle the first time?
Right. I mean, it seemed like they were. It almost read like they were back in hell.
Yeah, but it says here, well, he says, sealed within a vessel fashioned from the soul of my love could only be my heaven. So I guess, I could see that. Whatever. Never again will be separated. And then it's like, all right, cool. And then one of the twins sticks a used bubble gum on the top of the bottle and seals it, and that's it. Problem solved. And then, of course, by the time the Harrowers all get together, they're like, all right, so Mark Anthony is sealed inside Cleopatra's bottle, and where is it? Oh, no, we lost it. Where is it? And then there's a museum, employee that says, excuse me, folks, have you seen the latest addition to our collection? And it's one of our oldest pieces, dates back carbon dates back to the time of Cleopatra. I don't think you need to carbon date something 2,000 years old, but and then they're like, oh, look, that museum employee has a, an eye patch. That must be Mordemam. And she turned the flask into an exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum, and nobody notices that thing was never there, and now it's going to be there forever.
Yeah.
So that takes care of that.
Oh, we discovered it right here in our own museum.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So, yep. And that's it. So that's it for this one. And they're going back home in the subway station, and there's an old lady with a janky eye. And it turns out that it is Mordemam. She's following them back, and gives them an ominous warning that one of you guys has already betrayed me, and I'm going to let you know to redeem your actions and find out how fine the line is between being a Harrower and being a Cenobite. It's like, why can't you just say who's betraying her? Yeah. That would have helped so much.
And you know what? I blame her because she picked all these people, and they're a bunch of bumbling idiots.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they are. But anyway, so that's our heroes. That's issue number 4.
Mm-hmm.
And so issue number 5 is going to get a little more deeper into the nature of the Harrowers' weapons and the reason why Pinhead wants to use them and his plan to killing Mordemam.
Yeah.
And who's the Harrower that's actually running his own agenda and is going to betray Mordemam. And that's going to be the guy who has a brother that was taken to hell.
It seems to me that she should have researched him a little bit more, or helped him rescue his brother. You know, or told him, hey, don't rescue your brother because, he's not a good person anymore. Something. I mean, geez, come on.
Yeah. I agree. She should have let them know that the wheels were turning and that they were not, in full possession of all the facts, and that he was going to get tricked. And what do you think about the way that they depict Pinhead here? Because the number 5 opens with Pinhead talking to a demon, and he's getting some bad news from Balberith, and then he's going to kill the messenger. So
yeah, I know. And he talks about how he says the messenger says something like, I was only serving Leviathan. And he's like, well, in death you will serve me, or something like that. And it's kind of like, I don't know. He seems like he's really self-important,
right?
In this series,
yeah. He's kind of the guy who kills the messenger, and this happens a lot with like the '90s Pinhead and the comic books from Hellraiser and stuff like that. So he seems to be like they treat him as kind of a middle management kind of guy, but a guy who has his own plans as well. I mean, in a little bit, it reminds me of the Pinhead in Scarlet Gospels.
I was thinking that too. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got this whole plan to become more powerful and have this weapon that's going to be able to kill a goddess, and maybe he wants to do that to. Wasn't Mordemam one of Leviathan's sisters or something like that?
Yeah. She was like the opposite side of his coin, I guess, right?
Yeah. So he's got the sword from Marty Sevenbirds, which was one of the first Harrowers that died, and turns out it's voice activated.
Which would be confusing for people reading this series, because that character never existed in this series, only in the Hellraiser comics.
Yeah, you'd have to read the first story that where they were created, which was Hellraiser 17 and 18 from Marvel's epic storyline. So anyway, he wants to find out a way to operate the sword, because the sword would be able to open a portal between Hell and Earth, but he needs the incantation to make it work, because you have to say that incantation. So he wants to find a way to get a Harrower's voice and record that somehow, so he can use it to use the sword. So he's gonna find this very, very useful and convenient little demon that's called a mimic, and the mimic can imitate any voice, as long as the last voice that he hears someone speak, that's the voice he's going to have until someone else speaks in his presence, and then it'll just change to that one instead. So he wants to find a way to send a mimic to copy that incantation from the Harrowers as they say it, and then come back to hell, and he'll become, the guy who will speak the incantation, and then Pinhead could just walk into our world whenever he wanted.
This is a little too convoluted of a plot for such a short issue of this comic book.
Yeah, that is true. It's going to get even more convoluted. It's like, it's not a matter of thinking like 5 steps ahead. It's just a matter of like, how would you even know, that you'd be able to do that, and they would be able to pick the wrong person to save and all that. So anyway,
and Morty Mommy later on, she even asks Pinhead that, like, how did you know about all this? And he doesn't answer. It's like, we the readers, we want to know that too.
Like, the worst moment in issue number 5 to me is when, after this opening with Pinhead, you see all the Harrowers in an apartment somewhere having breakfast, and then they discovered a key inside one of the cereal boxes.
Yes.
And that's how Mortemame tells them that it's time to save someone else from hell, is that she puts a key somewhere, and they find the key, and the key is going to open one of the little tombstones in hell, and that's how they know there's a number on it, like 6,583,851, and they have to find that particular like tomb thing, and they have to open it and go in there and save the person. Okay, and so they find that in a cereal box, and then the next panel is they're already in hell, running away from a big hellish machine. And it's like, you don't think you could have saved another couple of panels just to say, okay, let's go and open this up and let's go in there? And I don't know. It just goes from, we found a key, and then run.
Yeah, goddamn, I know.
And they're in hell in the next panel, and it's jarring.
And I kept dozing off while I was reading this one because it was late at night. And I kept waking up and going, did I miss a bunch of pages? And then, while I was dozing off, and so I would go back and like, no. Yeah. I didn't miss what's happening. I don't understand. And then something even dumber happens. They lose the key, and they just rescue someone random.
Yes, they lose the key. The machines of hell are running on autopilot, but somehow they're not, because they're chasing them down and they're pushing against them and stuff. So they just break into one of the other tombs and go inside so they can escape the machines. And then they're like, they see a guy in there, and is like a kind of a smallish looking dude in like a wheelchair, and is like, oh, please help me. I've been in hell for so long. And they're like, well, instead of going back empty-handed, maybe we can just save this guy and tell Morty Mom that we got the right person.
Oh my god!
And
what a stupid play! I mean, I hate this part so much, because the fact that this trick actually works made me want to put this comic down and like, I'm done with this now.
Yeah. So turns out that the guy inside that tomb and the machines were pushing them towards that particular tomb because that was the bait. That's the guy in the wheelchair is not a nice guy. He's a serial killer. The wheelchair actually has like a mimic hidden inside it, and he just wanted them to save that person so they could take the whole thing back to their base, and the mimic would be able to copy whatever he hears them talk about. So they do that, and and there's even a next panel, which is them talking to Morty Mom in this weird scenario. It's like they're in hell or something. They're like in the giant pit of lava. It's unclear how they meet Morty Mom in this particular location, but she has this like a rope bridge over the lava. And she says, is this the soul I sent you to rescue? Is this the man from Vault 33292220030002? And I'm like, is that a FedEx tracking number?
Yeah.
So, apparently Gage says, yes, he's the one, I swear. He's lying. But they justify this by saying sometimes Gage lies with such conviction he convinces himself it's true. And Gage walks over the tiny little rope over the lava, and because he believes that it's true, she believes him, because he walked across the chasm of judgment.
Yeah.
He rolled a 20, and he did it.
Yeah, right. God damn it.
He rolled a 20 on deception for Morty Mom, right?
Yeah, good... Good D&D reference. I think, oh my god, that made me so mad. She is a goddess, and she knew already who she had in mind for them to rescue. Right?
Right.
So how does this make any sense? Just because he lied, she should be able to look at him and say, "Who's this guy?"
Right, exactly. But whatever. It's just in service of the plot, but it's
Yeah.
really a bad trope where it's like the Morty mom plays the pronoun game, like one of you, he's gonna betray me, whatever. It's like just say who it is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Malcolm Smith, decent job as Ashbury, not as good a writer as
Yeah.
he did in terms of acting. So
Well, and what was going on with the editing? Have you seen on page 17? There's a panel with somebody saying something, one of the Harrowers talking, and then they scratched it out.
oh really? I'll have to check that out.
On the top left panel on page 17.
Hmm. Oh, okay. So that is actually supposed to be the recitation that Ron Ringwood is saying in the alien, that old language.
Oh.
That's a spell that he says when he actually opens the
Okay.
portal to hell. That threw me off a little bit too. I was like, I can't read that, but then I realized, oh, that's the incantation.
Oh,
That
but it just looks like a blobby mess. I thought somebody just scratched out what he was saying.
Right. It looks like someone wrote two things on top of each other. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's their way of making it sound like a different language, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, because that's
Okay.
what the mimic was there to copy. So
Oh
right.
no. Okay.
So we just ran over one of the subplots of this. The subplot is that after this guy comes back, the killer from hell that they rescued, there's one guy who he's an artist, and he wakes up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, and he tells his wife, "Oh my God, he's back! He's back and wants to kill me. Smiley's back," and he starts drawing like this guy looking through his window, and the wife is saying, "No, it's just a bad dream. It's just that he's dead." It's like, "No, he's not. He's out there. I just got a vision." So as soon as this guy was taken out of hell, this artist, Mr. Taper, went to the police and said, "I had a vision, and this guy is gonna kill me, and this serial killer is gonna kill me." And they're like, "He's not gonna kill you." And it's like, "Why?" Because he never escaped from death row in San Quentin, and he died, and he was buried there, and he's dead. So, good day, sir. And then he slammed the door in his face.
Yeah.
And which is kind of a rational thing to do. I mean, the police wouldn't,
Although
as far as they're
they
concerned.
trusted him when he was a psychic, when he helped them catch that guy the first time.
Yeah, but okay, so this guy was on death row and he disappeared because he solved a Hellraiser box, I think, right?
Yeah.
So he was never actually executed or buried in San Quentin. He just disappeared. That should have put him as a escaped prisoner, as far as the police is concerned, I think.
Unless the prison covered it up. Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out too. It's like, how can they say that he solved the box and disappeared, and that he was murdered by other prisoners?
Yeah, unless he actually was put in the electric chair and then he went to hell, like the Hellraiser hell. But that would be like a really weird thing, because we usually don't think that this works out this way, right?
Yeah.
People get taken because they take a box, they solve it, they get taken into hell. I'm not sure that in this particular universe that we're reading here for the Harrowers, that evil people die and go to hell and end up seeing Leviathan and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
any case, don't think too hard, because it's going to get even more messy. And yeah, so who cares, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they just put that there so that this killer has a subplot. So he wants to take revenge on the psychic boy that led the cops to him. And so in the day that he has left, he wants to make sure he finds this guy Eric Taper and kills him. And the Harrowers are just so incompetent at what they do that they can't even understand that something's wrong. When he says, "I just want to go to the library and find out what's going on with the world since I've been in hell," and they're like, "All right, cool." And so he's looking at the newspaper clippings of his own arrest,
Yeah.
and somehow they don't even notice what he's doing. And then yeah. So he says, I found my son. I want to go talk to my son, and if you guys can help me. And they're like, okay, sure. So he's actually using them to drive him to his next murder victim.
Is that in? Are we into episode 6 now, or issue 6, or is that still 5?
Oh, right. I mean, I was just. You're probably right. We're probably going towards. Anyway, so.
And then there's also this the second story in this comic, Blood Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And this threw me because I don't remember seeing what led up to this. Right? I mean, all of a sudden, we've got a Harrower bringing his brother to the to these plastic surgeons, and he's like, uncenobite him.
Yeah. It's like when Picard comes out of the Borg cube, and they have to take out. Yeah, and they have to take all the pieces out, and they have to leave some in because, it's too far deep to get it out. Mm-hmm. But so I just wanted to say at the ending of issue 5, so Pinhead does retrieve his mimic from the wheelchair that they brought back from hell, because the guy says to the Harrowers, hey, I got this wheelchair in hell and I think it's evil. So if you guys can just throw it back into hell. And so they find him a new wheelchair, and Ron Ringwood opens a portal to hell with his dagger, which is that weird incantation that you were talking about. So that looks like.
Do you think that Pinhead orchestrated that hell machine, like driving them towards this specific cell?
Yeah. I just said that when I was talking about it. Yeah, I think that was meant to push them directly into that particular tomb, and that's how they took the bait. And so inside the wheelchair was actually the mimic,
right?
And he heard Ron say that, and so he copied that incantation. Now Pinhead has access to Marty Seven Birds' sword. He can open up a portal to come in and strike at any time. And so that's what's going to happen at the beginning of the 6th comic book, right? Because Dublin took his brother from hell, but we never saw him save his brother from hell, did we?
Yeah. That's confused me when it opened with Blood Brothers. Of like, did I miss something again when I dozed off before? And so I'm paging back again, trying to where did he rescue his brother? And I it's not there.
Yeah, it's not there. I remember in a previous episode that it's mentioned that he goes into hell and he stays behind because he wanted to find his brother. And he wasn't a part of the adventure with this new kid that they rescued, Smiley.
Yeah.
So it happens off camera, right? It happens off camera. And they go into a little reminiscence here about how Dublin and his brother Ryan, they were like twins, and, they were always connected. They always like watched out for each other. And so one time, his brother ended up. Well, his dad is actually the general Cenobite from the Hellraiser comic
with
books.
That spike coming out of his head.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how his brother ended up going to hell, but he brings it out. The surgeons take all the nails and all the chains and all the barbed wire out of his body and give it to him in a jar for some reason, and then he takes him into a hotel room. And I get this vibe just like a Frank coming out of hell, right? He's got all the bandages on, and he says, "Hey, can you get me some bottle of Jack?" Yeah. And Dublin's like, maybe if you get a little better, I think you should rest a little bit. It's like, well, I want to toast to us being together again.
Yeah.
And he's being kind of like this creep and stuff. And of course, as soon as Dublin leaves to open to get a bottle of Jack, he opens up the jar of stuff they pulled out of his body, and one of the nodules, or like a tumor or whatever, it's actually a Hellraiser box. So he's going to use it to open it and bring the general in and give Dublin a good quote on car insurance.
I think that this part is like Pinhead is so much smarter than any of the good characters. By magnitudes, including a goddess. I mean, why is this happening?
Well, it's Pinhead. It's just fan service. People just want to see Pinhead win, I guess. That's my take on it.
Yeah, so it was like, well, our series has to end, so let's just make Pinhead just wipe the floor with all of these good characters that we just created.
Right, right. So when Dublin comes back to the hotel room, Ryan has opened up the box. So Ryan, this is all your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And the general comes and he says, "Hi, son." And he's like, "No, no, I don't want to go to hell." And it's like, "Well, I need to go to hell because I'm hemorrhaging. The surgeons didn't patch everything up, and if I don't go back to hell, I'm gonna die. So you should take me back to hell, and we'll be together forever."
Yeah.
And that works. And Dublin goes into hell, and he becomes this monster Cenobite with the two brothers stuck together, and they're really cartoony.
Yeah,
And
kind of like the twins in Bloodline.
yeah, except goofier looking,
Yeah, yeah, they look like Muppets or something. They're really weird.
And the last panel is them singing, "Wherever we go, whatever we do, we're gonna go through it together."
Yeah.
And find out next month how Pinhead uses Dublin in his new form to bring down the goddess. So they were just like telegraphing everything at this point.
Yeah, right. It's like, okay, when I saw that, I was like, I don't know if I want to read that.
Yep. And then of course it's called Last Stand, issue 6.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, I want to say something about the title here. So the title is Death and Resurrection, Last Stand, The Devil's Pawn, Part 2, Double-Edged Sword.
Oh, wow.
So it kind of made me go, is this because Gene Colan was the writer?
Oh, I
or
get
the
it.
penciler? Yeah. I mean, it was just really, I don't know. It seemed like they forgot that they already had a title, so they added another title.
Yep. And they added another subtitle. And but it's anyway. So let's see if I can say all that stuff together. The Harrowers, number 6, Last Stand, part 2 of The Devil's Pawn, Double-Edged Sword.
And also Death and Resurrection, Last Stand.
Yeah. So, okay. So it opens up with Mortimame once again coming in just to complain and say, "My followers, Dublin Morse has been taken by the Cenobites. You're only 5 now, and soon perhaps only 3. So that's not a good start.
Yeah.
And she's like,
basically,
yes,
you're all stupid.
You're all stupid. Vera and Gage are helping a serial killer who's already killed people, and he might kill again. And so the betrayals have begun. I think the biggest betrayal is Mortimame just not telling them all the information.
Yeah.
She could like, she knows all this stuff. She could just tell them what's going on like she is saying now, but she could be a little more clear. But then she says, "What's all this mean, Mortimame?" And she says, "I don't know. For the first time, I cannot see the future. A thunderous cloud of malignancy cloaks my powers of prophecy."
Yeah.
So that's convenient. But anyway, so now that Pinhead has the ability to cut through the portal to our world, he does that right at that moment, and he comes in with a mimic, and he's got the sword, and he's like, "All right, here I am. My mimic has imitated the voice of Ron Ringwood, and here I come." And then he just basically, he wants to kill Mortimame, and his chains trap everybody, and so.
And as soon as he stabs her, all the Harrowers lose their powers.
Yeah. As soon as he stabs her, all that stuff is going to go away, which includes Vera and Gage, who are at this moment outside the door of that guy Eric, who's about to get murdered by the Smiley.
Yeah, because Smiley told him he wanted to be reunited with his son.
Yeah, and so they're just staying out there in the car while he goes in, and Smiley puts on a fake mustache, and nobody recognizes him, including the people who sent him to jail.
God, I know. Like, it's so terrible. I mean, it's like it's been long enough that he could have even grown a mustache, and I think they would still recognize him.
Yeah. So Gage senses that something is amiss, and he gives zinc to the Smiley to take with him. "Oh, just take my kitty cat. Just, I'll be in the car."
Yeah, because it's too cold for him in the car.
Yeah. And so he's seeing everything, and he's telling Vera, like, "This guy's a liar." And in the meantime, after Morty Mommy gets stabbed with a sword, every Harrower feels something, feels like the pain in his chest, right?
Yeah.
And just as Gage is about to switch places with Zinc, he discovers that that doesn't work. And so they run towards the house. They hear yelling. They hear a couple of shots going out, and then they break in. And actually, they killed Smiley. They were able to overpower him before he killed both of them, and they shot him.
Yeah.
And he's on the floor going like, "Stupid cat!" And would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for that cat and those stupid kids.
Yeah.
But anyway, Zinc is dead. So Zinc got shot as well. He was in the way. And so everything is terrible. Their powers are gone. Zinc is dead.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, it's like, thanks for unraveling everything that we were trying to get into.
Yeah, and then they're calling the cops. They're saying, yes, Chief, the man you just said was dead tried to kill us, and he's lying right here bleeding to death. And they call an ambulance. I mean, why? They called an ambulance. He tried to kill you. Is Smiley. Just shoot him in the head. But anyway. So, and somehow they don't think that this is the Harrower's fault, even though they were the guys who brought him to his house. So they just, we got to go. We got to check out the others, see what's gone wrong. And in the meantime, after Mortemame was stabbed by Pinhead, somehow they found a box to put Mortemame in. They stuck her in the back of a van and drove her to
a warehouse,
the 17th Street Pier in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Like okay. And then they just open the box and she falls out of the box.
Yeah, why is that pier a better location than where they were already at? Why do they have to transport her?
Yeah, Pinhead can open a portal to anywhere in our world. And why didn't he stay and finish the job? Right?
Yeah, right.
But anyway.
Yeah, it said that he was victorious, so he left. It's like, but she's not dead.
It seems like really sloppy work from Pinhead, who so far has been so calculating and so masterful in planning his attack. It's like, okay, I stabbed you there. You're going to die. I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
And of course, she's not dead. She's been, she's got a lethal wound, but somehow they managed to find the time to put her in a box, drive her to the Manhattan Pier, and she's going to stay there and try to stay there and hang on until all the Harrowers have come back so she can give them a message and regenerate. So it seems like the wound is not lethal because she says here, form a circle with a sacred rope. It will create a safe space within which I can rest and regenerate. And the wound is not a lethal one, but it traps me within this body until fully healed, making me vulnerable to further attacks. So, I mean, at this point, you just see what's going to happen, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah. And she tells them, okay, make a circle around me with your weapons out and protect me. Like, but they don't have any powers.
Yeah.
Why do I care what happens next? I really don't. I mean, these guys are either going to die or she's going to die.
Yeah. And also there's something stupid that happens again, which is what you said, like the Harrowers just do all the wrong things. She has told them that Dublin became a Cenobite, and she says, keep me here, don't answer anything, don't talk to anybody. And the phone rings, and one of the twins answers, and she says, hello, if you're not a Harrower, hang up, I can't talk to you. And in the meantime, it is Dublin calling her from hell, from a cell phone in hell. Okay?
Oh, I know. I hate it so much.
Below in hell, says the little text box, and it's Dublin talking to Pinhead saying, they're still in the city, Pier 22 on the west side. And so, okay, so...
She's like, well, but he is a Harrower. And Morty Mom is like, I told you he's a Cenobite now.
Yeah, so form a circle and stand out with your weapons out. And then, of course, Pinhead opens the portal. Dublin and his brother jump out saying, don't harm us, we come in peace. And I mean, Ryan, the other brother, his arm grabs a knife from his body, and he goes like, well, I'm here to kill you. And it's like, well, what are you doing? And then somehow Dublin says, this is not what I wanted. And it's like, you're now a Cenobite. You've been there. You've been talking to Pinhead. You know exactly what he wants to do. How did you think this was going down? So anyway, yep. And Pinhead shows up and stabs Mortemame with a dagger that belongs to Dublin. And so, he kills her. She turns into a skeleton. Everything turns to dust. Even their weapons turn to dust. And he's like, all right, did what I wanted to do. And now I'm going back to hell. And I'm going to leave my servant here, Ryan and Dublin. And anyway, so he disappears. And in the meantime, Smiley is in the hospital, still in a coma. And the time for his regeneration happens. And he turns into a little kid, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and he grabs some kind of a shroud from Morty Mom. I didn't understand this. What did he have?
Yeah, so he ended up finding her mantle on the floor. Like, she turned into dust, but her tunic was left behind. So this little kid feels this ache, and he's no longer Smiley. Of course, he's just a reincarnated, soul. So it starts anew, and he has this idea to just go there, and he's drawn to seeing Mortemame's tunic, and he grabs it.
He pickpocketed one of the cops on the way out.
He did. So yeah, he did.
What was that about?
Well, he needs money to go to Central Park or whatever. So he grabs Mortemame's tunic, and he goes to the park and makes a little tent, a shelter, and he lights up some candles. I have no idea where he got them from, but he falls asleep underneath it. And then the Harrowers are really, really sad, and they're burying little Zinc in the park. And, they're like, well, I guess Mortemame's dead. Now I don't know what we're going to do. Nobody's going to believe us if we tell the world that, about Mortemame and our mission. And then they go to the park and they're like, look, and they see the little kid sleeping with Mortemame's tunic. And all of a sudden there's a gigantic 10,000 candle vigil around this kid. And they never really explain why that happens or what's going on or why people are drawn to it. But it's supposed to give us this idea of hope that Mortemame is not really dead, that her spirit lives on, and that there's something there and she might come back one day, right?
Yeah. Yeah, except it's like, I don't feel hope. That just feels really forced to me. I don't feel any hope at all from this comic, because all of these flaws that these characters happen, there was sort of supposed to be this unwritten promise that these characters were going to develop into a cohesive team and become better people. And instead they became dumber and worse people.
Yes, and the story just jumps around and things happen for no particular reason. Like, why did everybody just gather around this sleeping kid in the park? Why are they all holding candles?
Yeah.
I mean, and then they say, well, we'll tell them about Mortemame and they'll listen. How do you know that? And it's like, as far as I'm concerned, it's just a kid sleeping under like a sheet in a park.
Yeah.
And
the Harrowers are just a bunch of regular people with no powers and no weapons.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, there's no proof that this ever happened. They don't have the weapons. They can't do anything anymore. They don't have any powers. So what's the point now to spread the word about Mortemame? And, anyway, so that's the Harrowers. And there was going to be some stuff here. I discovered some stuff researching. For example, on Beyond the Razor line, that was written originally for the Revelation site in October of '99. Robert Getz said, June of '94 would have seen the release of Mode Extreme, a title which was first considered as a collective name for the Barkerverse books before Razorline won out.
Oh.
To have been written by Sarah B.M., Mode Extreme was to introduce two Washington, D.C. gangs, the White Zeals and the Black Quids, as they are about to go to war. It soon becomes clear that this gang war has been artificially created by a being called the Sickle, who has stoked the fires of confrontation merely to entertain his Neurath masters. So this goes on for a while, and they talk about, the Zeals. Jose Tamayo, known as Gospel, finds out the truth, and he tries to prevent the slaughter. It's already begun, though, and soon the only ones left standing are Gospel and gang leaders Chariot and Raveman.
They already kind of did that with the Hellraiser comics. They had an artificial gang war against the cops.
They did, yeah, yeah, on the but Devil's Brigade. So it says
Yeah.
here, Gospel convinces them of the truth, and the three team up to defeat the Sickle. During this battle, an interdimensional wall is opened through which Chariot and Wraithman fall, only to emerge transformed. Black limbs are mismatched with white ones, guns have melded into fingers, and knives prick their hearts, which are visible in the high-tech furnaces of their chests. With Gospel, they form Mode Extreme. If they're ever to be whole again, they must protect each other's flesh while battling mobsters, pushers, and corrupt politicians. And the reason why I was bringing this up was because this article went on to say the same catalog that describes these unrealized books also provides some tantalizing glimpses of what might have been. Ecto Kid would have met James Dean and Janis Joplin. Saint Sinner would have fallen in love with one of the hyper kind. And the loss of his sense of humor would have made the now terribly serious Trip Monroe from Pokemon X unintentionally funnier. Additionally, there were hints in an Egyptian storyline that appeared in the Harrowers and that mentioned the Kuo that the Barkerverse and the Hellraiser universe would have managed to cross over, thereby bringing this collection
Oh,
of comics-only characters into the already established world of Clive Barker's fiction. Unfortunately, the Harrowers met the same fate as Razor Line. So yeah, like Cleopatra mentions the powers of the
yeah,
Kuo.
yeah.
So I think yeah, that was kind of working towards making them all part of the same
And
universe.
when she said that, I thought I recognized that, but I couldn't think of where from.
Yeah, yeah. So that was it. That was the Harrowers.
Yeah,
I feel like this could have been a lot better.
yeah,
They could have gone on to last a little bit longer. I would have liked to see them come up with some sort of story that didn't imply them picking up random people from hell.
yeah,
Maybe they could have picked some. Maybe they could have, merged it in with the lore from the books of the damned.
yeah.
Get
It
Isidore Klauski or whatever his name was, from hell and stuff like that.
it seemed like it was a really good idea that just sort of petered out.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what happened here. I blame the writing a little bit because the writing seemed really, really subpar. I mean, when you compare this to some of the Hellraiser comic books, they were so much better in terms
Yeah,
of like a few pages of like a Hellraiser story could be so rewarding.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this was kind of a bummer, and I hadn't read these before, but now, and I was looking forward to it.
Yeah. Hmm.
But now it was so disappointing, especially the last two issues.
So they brought the Harrowers back for Boom Comics. They were a different incarnation. There were different characters in there,
Yeah,
and so they destroyed Hellraiser boxes and stuff like that.
yeah, which makes
Yeah.
sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that version of the Harrowers. I wish there was a little more to that also.
Yeah. So my last comment on this is I wish they would have had a better storyline. I wish they could have come up with some sort of story where they would save some key people from hell to somehow overturn something. The general didn't really do much in this. He only
No,
shows up to reunite the two brothers together.
say
But
like, oh, by the way, I'm your dad.
yeah,
Like,
and it's like, okay, well, but that didn't really go anywhere.
no.
They just wanted to bring him in just for the sake of having the general in because he was part of the original story where they were created. But yeah, I would like to have seen more about this. Like, why was Mortemame here? What was her plan? Was her plan just to save random people? What were the criteria for her to deem them worthy of being rescued?
Yeah,
We'd never got anything like that. So I thought that could have helped flesh out the story a lot more and understand what Mortemame was trying to accomplish.
yeah, yeah. It's a little bit of wasted potential,
Hmm.
and characters and plot ideas and threads that were we were expecting to develop just kind of devolved.
It could have become a lot more like a D&D theme comic book, like because these are regular people that have like gigantic magic axes and daggers
Yeah,
and swords and stuff, and that they could have made like a Harrowers, D&D source book or something like
yeah,
that. That could have been something fun. You'd be fighting like, you know, if someone does this, I want 10%. But if someone could have made like a board game of the Harrowers where you have to fight, different kinds of Cenobites, and you go into a dungeon of hell and you have to rescue these people and go on a quest.
Yeah.
Maybe someone out there will do that someday. Who knows?
And I thought that they hamstrung this series right off the bat when they said, like, oh, you can only go in there just 1 or 2 people at a time. It's like, well, then they're not a team.
Right.
It's like they just chopped this comic off at the legs, doing right from the start with that.
Right. Yeah. So I hope that we get to see the Harrowers again in some other incarnation in the future.
Yeah.
They definitely need to have a clear view what their mission is, and how that would play out in a bigger view of things. Like, so they're going to save people from hell, but who are they saving and why? And is that going to be part of a bigger story? Because it didn't seem like there was a bigger story with this at all. They were just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And, the whole Cleopatra story with Mark Anthony was kind of silly.
Yeah. Yeah, and it felt like a waste when we knew that there were only going to be 6 issues, that they spent so much time on that.
Yep. So that was the Harrowers. If you have it, it's probably a interesting comic to have as a completist. Gene Colan's art is always great. I'm not going to lie. I like his art. I have 1 or 2 pages of the Harrowers in original comic book form. So that's great stuff. I mean, you can see the way he draws is just almost effortless. Like, the pencils are just what you see is exactly what he does in the page. So
I looked a little closer at the artwork after you'd said that on our last episode, and it's like, I do like the art. I think maybe it was the coloring that kind of bugged me a little. I like the pencils, but it was maybe the coloring a little bit that there was something about early on the way the Cenobites looked like these sort of formless demonic blobs.
Yeah. And they have all these machines and stuff. I like seeing all these machines, and I didn't like the idea of hell being like a bunch of above ground like graves with like little tombstones on them,
like a mortuary or something.
Or like
little cells.
Yeah, or like a like a morgue of sorts.
That's what I was thinking of. That's what I meant, as a morgue.
Yeah, with like numbers and stuff. Makes it seem more bureaucratic, but I guess I could see that. I mean, it's
less imaginative.
Yeah, less imaginative, less expensive. Like, what we see in Hellbound is a lot bigger. Mm-hmm. So this one seems like they just make this backdrop, which like all these like things, and there's a big ladder there, and you're going to climb up and open it up with the little key, and it didn't seem to fit the Hellraiser universe to me.
No.
But that's fine. Like, okay, someone has to make the Harrowers game box now. They have to make little figurines of Gage and Zinc and come up with a quest line.
Yeah, that would be cool. Actually, I've been sort of thinking a lot about a Clive Barker Dungeons and Dragons expansion. I think that would be a really fun project.
That's right, because you play Dungeons and Dragons. You play it a lot more than I do. So someone could come up with a source book. Yeah,
I think that would be great. I was thinking about the overall the circle of the Imagica, and where would the Innovo, there's the Innovo, and then how would that fit in with the Metacosm and the Sea of Isabella and the Sea of what is it?
Liquidity.
Liquidity, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe there could be more seas in the Clive Barker universe, because you have Liquidity, you have the Sea of Isabella, and they're both magic places. One of them has souls swimming on it. The other one has monsters and Abarat people swimming on it. But what if there's more?
Flow into each other. I think Clive had said that they might flow into each other at one point.
That'd be amazing. Yeah. So it could all come up as a big unified theory of Clive Barker.
Yeah.
But that seems like so much work that
God, I know. Yeah.
One person wouldn't be able to work on that. We'd have to have a lot more.
Yeah. Well, and first is we got to get our book finished.
Yes, we got to get our book finished. And so what's next?
So next up, we'll have more news, and then we'll be going into Abarat, Days of Magic, Nights of War.
All right, so keep an eye out for that, and we'll keep bringing the news and making some more blog posts.
Yeah. All right, and this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. You can find the show notes for this episode and join the discussion over at www.clivebarkercast.com, where we have news, features, reviews, and links to all the ways you can connect with us. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts and every other place you can find podcasts. Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial, podcast, and news blog that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.